And we are back. Welcome everybody to another episode of the Channel 135 podcast. This is the show we talk about our favorite things in life, movies, TV shows, and pop culture. I'm your host Cams, and I'm here with the usos. We've got from the Counter Rock podcast, our rugby union podcast, Stace. How's it, bro?
Aloha ahi ahi. That's the limit of my research right there. That means good evening in Hawaii. So cheers, boys.
Nice, bro. Nice, bro. Man, good to have you on. Good to have you on the pod, man.
Yep.
And we've got all the way from the 135 Footy Show podcast, our NRL Rugby League podcast. Bobby, what's up, bro?
Yeah, how's it going, boys? I wasn't too flash like Stace to go and research some Hawaiian language, so apologies to all the Hawaiian listeners out there. We'll do better next time.
That's all right, man. That's all right. So we are watching Chief of War right now. So we're going to get our big dose of historical drama going on in the Hawaiian Islands back in the 16th century. But yeah, man, we are here to talk about Chief of War episode 3 that dropped last Friday. And yeah, before we do that, man, just want to ask you guys, man, how's your week been? And man, what have you guys been watching during the week?
Yeah, no, not much. Just the usual stuff with me. Busy with work, trying to keep up with all the podcasts that the network's putting out. But this is really good timing for me because I watched Squid Games. That was a bit of a bummer for anyone who's following that show. And I was just on the lookout for a new show, so this one came up at a really good time. So yeah, that's it. Just been watching this and my usual stuff.
Nice. How about you, Bob?
The kids wanted to watch season 2 of Wednesday. I think I stayed awake for the first episode. I'll probably need to go and rewatch it. But I happened to catch that War of the Worlds movie that
man.
Ice Cube's in.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, man.
What did you think, man?
I didn't finish it. Like, I couldn't finish that movie. That's probably the first movie in a long, long time that I've not actually watched all the way to the end. And I should have read the reviews before I watched it. Because when I was reading the reviews after I had watched like 3/4 of it, it was terrible. Like, that apparently has been panned all across the world, that movie. And I can see why. I don't know why I wasted that almost an hour of my life watching what I did. But yeah, man, I struggled to finish that movie. I just turned it off and I was like, I'm going to do some chores or something, man. It was terrible. I couldn't believe that they were able to make a movie like that. Like, I think if you've got lots of money, you're well known, you shouldn't just create films or star in films just for the hell of it, because man, your reputation takes a massive kick in the guts. And I don't even know why they got Ice Cube to play that role. And in the way that he played it, I don't know if you boys have seen it, but yeah. Anyway, that was a terrible movie. And then the reviews have been giving it like really, really crappy scores, like 2 out of 10, and Rotten Tomatoes is terrible.
Yeah, yes, because they've just finished the Comic-Con in San Diego, and then during the Comic-Con they showed previews of a whole bunch of TV shows and movies that are coming up. Masters of the Universe was one of them, but they showed the trailer for War of the Worlds, the one with Ice Cube. But when I saw that trailer, I thought, man, this is cool. This is pretty cool, you know. So I watched it, man, and I watched the whole thing. But man, I knew it sucked when there's that scene when the son knew all the answers.
Yes.
I don't know if you watched that scene, but man, when that came up, I was like, what the hell? I know what this is all about now. I was like, bullshit, man. That was one of those badly written movies, man. Like, even the whole genre that genre that they do, it's called, I looked it up, it's called screen life genre, where the whole movie is on the computer screen.
Oh yeah.
And you do Zoom calls and you do watch YouTube.
Yeah.
So there are a few movies made like that in that style. It works for some movies. It doesn't work for War of the Worlds, man. But
no, it
it's
did
really
not.
bad.
That was wouldn't recommend it to your worst enemy type of movie.
Gee.
It is bad. It is
If you
really
want to watch
bad.
an Ice Cube movie, just watch Friday, man. Ice Cube does not need to diversify his portfolio of acting. He just needs to stick to what he knows, stay in his lane, because
Yeah.
every single character is just Ice Cube in a different genre of movie. Like, he's Ice Cube in a comedic, he's Ice Cube in a drama, he's Ice Cube when he's wanting to be Triple X in an action. Like, it's just Ice Cube. There's no depth. It's just Ice Cube. You get what you're gonna get with Ice Cube. You kind of know what you're gonna get. But yeah, man, like you, I saw the trailer. I was like, man, this looks good. I thought, man, it's a bit different for Ice Cube role. Man,
Yeah, Stace, don't watch that movie at all.
it's terrible.
Just
bro.
avoid that movie. Avoid that movie. Speaking of bad movies, I watched last night the new Eddie Murphy film that's on Prime as well.
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't even forgot the name of it, but it's about him, and he's a armor guard. He's an armor guard dude, and yeah, I say it's better than the War of the Worlds, but it's still a bad movie. Yeah, I forgot the name of it. Shit.
Yeah, so it was between the Eddie Murphy movie last night and Stallone's new one, Armored.
Oh,
Have you seen
Armored.
It's called Armored. The whole thing is set around this armored car, this truck. It's full of gold, and Stallone and his posse of men try to. There was another.
Sounds like the
hour
same
and a half.
premise as the Eddie Murphy one.
Okay, well, probably. But when we were looking at the reviews, like, say the Ice Cube one was like 2 out of 10. The movie we watched last night, Armored, which is a Stallone one, it's on Netflix, I think. It was like 3.8 out of 10. And then the Eddie Murphy one was like 4. Eddie Murphy's movie was the best of a bad bunch. I should have just watched the Eddie Murphy, but now I didn't even want to watch that after your reviews. Like, nah.
Yep. I'll tell you what's not a waste of time though is the Chief of War. It's pretty good, and we're gonna discuss that right now. But first, just gonna tell everyone to follow us on our socials. We're on the WesWes Network on Facebook, WesWes Network on Instagram. But you can follow the channel 135 on our new YouTube channel, WesWes Movies and TV, and also WesWes Movies and TV Instagram, and our Facebook group page as well. But yeah, man, before we get into our review and breaking down of the scenes, I want to give you guys the Chief of War Episode 3 Channel 135 recap.
Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert!
City of Flowers, directed by Anders Enstrom, written by Thomas Batas Sabet, Jason Momoa, and Doug Young. It's 1 year after the events of Episode 2, and Kayana has traveled through cold regions of Alaska, where a shipmate named Tony teaches him how to use a musket. Next, the ship docks into Zamboanga, present-day Philippines, where Kayana hopes to buy guns to take back home, but doesn't have enough money. He meets Vi, a Hawaiian exile who proposes a deal. She'll help him secure guns in exchange for sandalwood trade access for the Europeans. Meanwhile, Mali, part of the crew, steals maps to the Hawaiian Islands with plans to sell them, endangering Kayana's mission and potentially exposing the islands to unwelcome exploitation. On Oahu, Chief Kahikili's tyranny intensifies. He brutally punishes a chief who plotted against him by forcing the chief's wife to drink a poison cup intended for him. On Hawaii Island, Kamehameha participates in an underwater endurance test and begins organizing food supplies to prepare for war. He tells this to his uncle when he is summoned. Kahumanu, tutored by English by the stranded sailor John Young, is summoned by her father and told of her arranged marriage to Kamehameha. Although torn, she learns that her union is viewed as crucial to protecting Hawaii. Additionally, Kahumanu fears the prophecy concocted by the seer Tola. She was told she could not bear children, devastating blow in a society that expected her to produce heirs. To protect her reputation, Moku insists she keep this a secret. The wedding takes place and the couple undergo a traditional ceremony, a ritual meant to affirm a legitimate heir in front of witnesses. Meanwhile, back on the English ship, Tony, suspicious of Mali, is caught, beaten up, and captured. And that was your Channel 135 episode recap. Come to you, Stace. Man, your first thoughts of this episode?
Yeah, I thought it was a good episode overall. I think one of the overarching themes throughout the show has been that prophecy, that a king will come and unite all those 4 islands. So I thought this episode did a really good job in showing the influence that the prophecy has on the different characters and how they're placed in the story, and thus the prophecy is starting to become a bit more clearer. So if you think about Kaiana, he's been in foreign lands for a year. So when he comes back, he will have a breadth of knowledge around Western ideals and weaponry that no other highborn Hawaiian has experienced. And that could prove quite valuable in backing the right king for the prophecy. We talked about Kamehameha. Now he's shown his both brawn and brains throughout the episode. So firstly, there's that, the test of strength in the sea that he does, and also his wisdom and how he would prepare for an invasion should the time come, and learning lessons from mistakes of the past battles. And then you can see in Ku'uamanu, she's been made aware of her place as a wife and how she can help Kamehameha fulfill his potential as well as the prophecy and world influence over Hawaii's future. So I think this was a good setup episode to sort of maneuver the main characters into position and to allow the prophecy to come to fruition. So that was my main take out of the episode.
Nice, yeah. Interesting that they pushed this 1 year ahead of episode 2. And then when I thought about like how they're running the series, like episode 1 and 2, they put it at the same time the week before. So to me, it seems like that's just like a prelude, a prelude to the whole story, because now we get into the nitty-gritty of the beginning of Kamehameha. But that is because we need to know what Kaiana's all about and his sort of position in the whole story. Because remember, he's not the main guy. If this is about the king, right? So yeah, I thought it was interesting that because you can start the series in episode 3 and just have all this flashback stuff, right? But I thought that was interesting. How about you, Bob?
Yeah, I thought it was a good way to progress the story. Similar to Stace, I enjoyed the fact that they set up that whole thing to, like, they keep referencing the prophecy every time they go back to Hawaii. But the time skip's necessary because it takes months and months to travel anywhere by sea back in those days on those ships. So it's more believable if you say a year later, well, this is what Kaiana's been doing in that time. He's been away from the Hawaiian Islands. He's traveled up to Alaska. They've gotten all the stuff there that they need to trade back down to Philippines. I had to Google, where did they go? I was like, East.
Exactly, man.
I was like, East India. I was like, where's that? Oh, it's modern day Philippines. It's like, okay then. It was cool that they introduced another sort of world outside of Hawaii. Well, a world outside of Hawaii that progresses the story. I was a little bit disappointed in the first couple of episodes when it wasn't just going to be solely in Hawaii and wasn't just going to be a big, massive, this clan versus that clan, this chief versus that chief. Because I didn't know anything about Hawaiian sort of history. And so introducing Palangi's real early in that second episode, I was like, oh, okay, they're going into the influence of the Palangis coming to Hawaii. And then where does that story take you? You get a really fleshed out sort of look as to what Kaiana's character's been doing while he's away. And like Stace, yeah, man, he's going to become central because he's learning about muskets, but he still has no idea about, you can't just give them a few coins and you want 100 guns. You gotta, he doesn't understand currency or any of that sort of stuff, which is, it's foreign to, Hawaiians at the time. Interesting to see that they've got another Hawaiian character that's also left the islands, and kind of handy to have her there as a sort of a plot point, I suppose, to make her there and to get her there to be some sort of character that Jason Momoa's character plays off. The whole, we need to learn from these white men. You've been away from the islands too long. Yes, no, you need to understand that this is what we need to do. It was an interesting. It was quite a big, massive shift away from what we had just seen. The whole native indigenous battles you saw on the first sort of couple of episodes where they killing each other quite brutally, as Simon sort of talks about last week with the weaponry, with native Hawaiian weaponry. And then we move to a scene where, okay, there's muskets, there's, big massive daggers, and then there's bad guys. Like that guy that turned on Tony, who was helping out Kayana on the ship with showing him how to be a musket. You could kind of tell that guy was going to be a bit of a bad dude in the second episode. So it's like, okay, he's trying to pull his own sort of strings now to get his claws on the map that shows how to get to Hawaii. And so you can sort of see, okay, they're setting up some sort of double cross here. But then it's interesting to see where it's going to go. That whole scene, I think Sai wanted us to talk about that. We'll probably get into it, but there's like lots of stuff that happens back in Hawaii, with the king's son waking up and he's next to a dude. And we'll probably touch on that later, but there's lots happening in this third episode. So yeah, I thought it was a cool way to progress the story from the first two.
Yeah, I'm wondering what you said before, Stace, before we jumped on the mics, how we talked about how we're wondering if there's going to be a season 2 or season 3, right? And you guys pointing out that it might be a season 2, depending on how well the season goes. And talk about progressing the story forward. You're concerned, Stace, about, man, we progress it too much, we'll run out of timeline, But yeah, so it'll be interesting to see where we go after this. But for me, this episode 3, this was a really good episode. And it's really good because, we got our first episodes 1 and 2. We introduced us to what's going on in the islands, about the kings and Kayana, and just a little hints of those balangis that showed up, right? So now we're 1 year ahead. We're just getting some more layers of story into it. So I think for me, like, it's now we've got the different characters and where they stand. So there was 2 interesting scenes for me in this episode, and it was the scene where Kamehameha, he is summoned to see his uncle, who's the king, and then you see the king's son, played by Cliff Curtis, and it's that conversation that they have, sets up where those characters stand. So that was an interesting scene there, and we'll talk about that when it comes. And the other interesting scene was when Kayana he meets Vi, and they do that. They discuss having a deal to try and get guns for Kayana, but it might be a sacrifice because in order for them to get guns, they have to take that sandalwood. So it's a bit delicate there because there's exploitation involved in all that kind of stuff, and if things go wrong, it will probably turn out really bad for the Hawaiians. So we'll just have to see what happens.
Yeah, I think that's a good point that you raised about that scene at the end there with Kayana and Vi talking to that ship captain about trading sandalwood for guns. Remember, I think Bobby brought it up, how Kayana says to Vi, you've been away too long and you're basically thinking like a Westerner now. But she's seen firsthand the greed of a lot of these white people. So she's in a way trying to use that to her advantage. And that trade, it sounds like a really good idea. It sounds pragmatic in theory. But if we look back on history, for a lot of colonized countries, what starts off as a mutual trade, we'll give you sandalwood for weaponry, quickly turns into resource exploitation and economic domination from the Europeans. So I was watching that scene, man. I was thinking, man, don't do it. But I did a little bit of research, and if we look back on the early 1800s in Hawaii, that was historically called the sandalwood era in Hawaii due to that trading. And it tied Hawaii's economy to all these foreign markets. And that in turn led to a lot of over-harvesting and eventual ecological collapse. So this is sort of classic colonial economics. There's resource extraction in exchange for guns or ships or cannons or whatever imported goods they're trying to get. But that leads to sort of this economic dependency. So this feels like a small step, but it massively shapes the future of Hawaii and will ultimately change. It changes the warfare as well in places like the Pacific. So we saw those awesome weapons in episode 1 and 2, but that's not going to stand up against guns and cannons and that sort of stuff. So I quite like that scene you brought up, Cams, because it shows a little bit of the naivety and the underestimation that a lot of the Hawaiian people, and it's been in episode 1 and 2, they didn't really rate the white people that much, but they're quite dangerous. Hey, they've they just see those white guys as sort of suppliers in a mutually beneficial arrangement, but not the political threats. And I thought that was a common miscalculation. And even for us, when we look at it from a New Zealand perspective, you look at New Zealand's history, it was a similar thing again. So I like how they subtly added that to the show. I thought that was quite well done.
Even by when she mentions, these Pauskin, all they respect is money. We get the sandalwood because of money, because that's what they respect. Yeah.
I thought it was interesting that it highlighted that, prior to the explorers that were coming around at the time in the Pacific, saying that they found the islands, there were probably traders that had already come through, maybe by accident, and had found these islands. Because you get that case in New Zealand, because New Zealand was already trading with lots of different people prior to England finally getting here and then trying to establish the treaty and that. Like they were already traveling around to Australia, to overseas. Like there was already commerce happening in places like New Zealand. It was probably common amongst all the Pacific Islands, actually, where there was some commerce happening between traders that would find their way through, whether it was by accident or not, and in Pacific indigenous communities who probably had seen Palangis for the first time. It's interesting that they've brought that into the Chief of War. It's probably just a small aspect of it, but I like the fact that it does highlight that, hey, we were already trading with these Palangis before they had set a massive foothold into the Pacific. It was already sort of commerce happening between Pacific Island people and these Palangis.
We saw that guy, was it Mali, that other Palangi dude? So he's trying to scheme and sell maps of Hawaii to outsiders. So maybe I don't know if that was an accident, or maybe it was accidental in a lot of cases, but I'm sure there were guys who had legitimate maps. So that was sort of an act of betrayal. But, he's got that motivation of like how they're painting a lot of these white people. There's a lot of greed, there's self-preservation. So he sort of, he embodies a lot of those dark elements of that side of things. But, just looking at, again, if you think about it historically, the knowledge of the geography, that was quite strategic. So they used those maps to work out their military approaches, where the resources were so they could get the exploitation, where they could do their settlement areas for the white people. And like you mentioned, Bob, like you think about it from a Pacific context and thinking about us in New Zealand, they would like get a lot of the locals to help them and aid them in their mapping and their navigation. So then they were in exchange for some goods, but that inadvertently accelerated their own colonization in a lot of ways, because the white people knew where to go, where to attack, and where to set up. So that was definitely the case here in New Zealand. So I don't know if that's what happened in Hawaii, but that's what happened here.
It's interesting the different incentives for Hawaii, because that guy Mali, when he talks to that other captain, tells him, well, if we can, he doesn't say it out loud, but he like hints that if we take over these islands, we can use this as a pathway to a trade route to China. Without even knowing the resources that are actually on the island, where Vai knows the resources on the island that can use for trade. So
that's what I was talking about before, because it feels like the Hawaiians, they're just looking at it as a mutually beneficial trade agreement. With these Palangis, they're thinking of political nuances involved, and we can use this as a pathway to China. We can get all these other resources, and it's like, shucks, you've underestimated what's going on here.
Their weaponry, like he references them as being quite, they've only got like clubs and sticks and against our muskets. They're primitive, so it's like they already got those workings in their head about coming to take over.
Yeah. So, in the beginning of that episode, so as you mentioned before, we jumped 1 year later and we look at the boat ship that's in Alaska, and we see Kayana do some hunting, and he's using his muskets and learning how to use it and all that kind of stuff. But it just occurred to me, there's that scene when he's learning English. Well, he learns a little bit of English, and when he talks English, it's broken English. And then I just realized this is the reason why they have subtitles and they talk in their language in this whole series. Because I don't think it would work if they didn't talk Hawaiian. Because all of a sudden you're gonna talk English for the whole film. Next minute you're gonna talk broken English on the ship. You know?
Yeah.
So I think for practicality reasons, you have, even though they want to do it for authenticity, you had to do it anyway. Yeah, you had to talk in the Hawaiian language.
Yeah. I'll actually give a shout out to like Apple TV for maintaining that authenticity you talked about before, because there must have been some commercial risks as well in creating a TV show, for consumption to the masses in Hawaiian language. But I wonder, you can't do that for the whole thing. I wonder if people might start turning off, get tired of reading for an hour. So maybe they had to incorporate some English in there for that reason too.
It's one of the most expensive TV series ever
I heard that.
created.
Because how much was it? Did
Oh,
you find out how much?
didn't know that. I didn't know
It's
that.
in like $250 or $300 million that they spent
Wow.
Man.
on this show, and I was like, holy shit. Well, I can see why they got who was it, the music guy at the beginning? Is it Hans Zimmer?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, that's
When you
right.
roll
I
the
see his
credits,
name on
and
the
I was
credits.
Hans Zimmer. No, wait, Hans Zimmer. So that's like a Hollywood blockbuster
Yeah.
music guy.
Here's 50 million right there, gone.
Yeah, I reckon. Like he's a big guy. Like when the credits roll and you hear the music, it's like, Sully, this is a powerful song. Hans Zimmer. Sully, they've got some powerful big guns doing the music for this.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
it's like a super expensive
It is
production.
Apple. Hey, it
Yeah,
is Apple.
true.
Apple's got a lot of money. More money than Hollywood, I guess. But then they can splash, eh? So.
Well, it's streaming services, right? Like this is the way the future of the film industry sort of headed, which again forms part of the reason why Jason Momoa filmed most of it down in New Zealand, because of the perks that they get, the tax breaks, the tax cuts that they get, more than if they'd film it in Hawaii, because they're bringing the US dollars down here to New Zealand. They got a better exchange rate. If they were to film it in Hawaii, it'd be super expensive. It's $1 for $1 over there, whereas they come here, they get better value for money. So yeah, it was a bit of a catch-22 for them to bring the whole production here and try to make it feel authentic. Like lots of people saying, oh, well, you only filmed for like a month in Hawaii and then the rest of the production is filmed in New Zealand. So I don't know. The proof is in the pudding to see what product comes out of it once all 9 episodes have been screened.
Have you guys got any concerns by this point after episode 3? Well, it's all good.
I think, like we talked about it a little bit, but the pacing. Like you think about that, was it episode 1? I can't remember if it was episode 1 or episode 2, but they say, what's that King Tim Werder's character? He goes, "Oh, we're going to go and kill that young king. We're going to go across." 5 minutes later, they grabbed him and they just killed him straight away. Now they just skip a year. There's no real, building up the tension and playing it out a little bit. So yeah, like I talked about before, if they want to do season 2 and season 3, I think we might get to the end of the prophecy by this season if they carry on this pace. So what season 2 and season 3 is going to be about could be interesting.
And I think one of the issues of time skipping is makes sense for where Kayana is traversing between Alaska, the Philippines, Hawaii, and wherever else this character is going to end up going. But for Kahekili and all of his guys that are on the Hawaiian Islands, it takes only like a few hours to travel in between. Like if this guy's keen on just going around and destroying everyone, so like a year's a long time. Look at what he did in like a week. He went and he fighted everyone, and then he used Guyana and his brothers to get that sort of victory, because I need to fulfill the prophecy, because I'm the lightning and the thunder or whatever, and here's my cloak, and so you're gonna have to think, so there's Kahekili gonna then, like, they sort of try to explain a little bit where they've got that other chief, and we need to like bow down to this guy, or don't worry, I've poisoned his mea. It's like, so that's the most terriblest thing that you could try to do, because and the next minute, like, oh well, they all die. Everyone needs to die.
Mm.
So he's still on a massive killing spree, and that was just one chief. But like, it doesn't sort of fit where it's like, man, if he was wanting to unite Hawaii, I'm sure he would have done it within a year. That Jason Momoa was running around trying to find muskets. It's like, wow. So I don't know. That's where the time skip might cause issues for me, seeing how quickly Tim Morrison's character took over that island the first episode, and now with the massive sort of time skip, it's like, well, he still hasn't been able to find all these other chiefs to get them to submit to him. I don't know. I don't think they've explained that really well just yet. You know, why hasn't he gone and done all of these things in the time that Guyana's been away?
This episode also introduces one of the main historic figures in Hawaiian history, Kamehameha. The first, I think he's before he was king, so his uncle is the king at the moment, and he looks like he's ready to pass away. So we'll see what happens, because there was a bit of tension between him and his cousin, played by Cliff Curtis. So Cliff Curtis, his character is the next one in line, but it seems like the king, his dad, doesn't think so. It feels like it, because he sort of he doesn't give his son any attention and gives it to Kamehameha. So that whole scene what I talked before, like, that was an interesting scene, to see where they stand, where those characters stand. It looks like there might be, I don't know, some further conflict between the two cousins, maybe a battle over the kingship after the dad dies, or I don't know, but probably.
They've taken that scene straight out of Gladiator. Julius Caesar, or what's the emperor's name, telling Maximus, so when I die, I'm going to pass everything to you. And then he tells his own son, and his son kills him. So it's like, I have a feeling it sounds like it's going to be one of those same sort of situations playing out. But yeah, like Stace pointed out before, it was a real testament, and it showed his wisdom, and whether or not he kind of, you know, did that on purpose to try and placate his cousin, or, you know, he could see how his cousin was sort of reacting, and he wasn't really too keen anyway. He's like, oh well, hey man, me and my warriors, we're all good doing what we're doing, you know. I ain't about that king life. But when the king asks him, and then he's, yeah, this is what we should do. We should store me. Ain't is well, it's too late. You know, even if we start now, we're way too late. Oh, so I started ages ago.
Yeah,
You know, I've already got storage facilities packed up. You know, we're ready to go for another invasion. And I was thinking, this guy, you know, and like they said, they already pointed out his physical prowess in the water. You know, able to hold his breath for. So he was Aquaman in that first scene. They made him Jason Momoa's character. It was like they took Kayana out of there, and they put Kamehameha in. It's like they're trying to, okay, we've got Kayana in here. Yes, it's the chief of war, but the story really should be about Kamehameha is the one that actually united Hawaii. So how are we now going to take the mana away from Kayana and give it to Kamehameha? Well, there's a little bit of mana right there, and showing how physically strong he was. He was able to hold his breath, and those guys are struggling for breath, and he's walked back under the water with his rock. Yeah, doing his Arnold scene, walking out with the rock on his shoulders, like.
And the rainbow, there's that rainbow in the background coming down on them. It's like perfect day.
The chosen one. And then when Moku's having that conversation with Kahumanu, and I was there when he was born. You know, everyone was waiting around. Everyone was waiting around for a king, but I saw one being born. He was born under the star and the comet and whatever. I was like, oh, okay. So he's not only strong, he's not only wise, but he's also blessed by the heavens, man. Like, he's born and the stars were aligned when this guy was born. So you're right.
I believe that. I believe that did happen. But this is what I believe. Yeah, he was born, and you look up in the sky, and the shooting star came. Pure coincidence. Shooting star came right in that moment. I was like, damn, this guy is the chosen one.
Well, that kind of thing happened to,
Yeah.
people who lived their lives by superstition and whatever their beliefs were, the heavens and the constellations and all those heavenly bodies, moon, sun, stars, all the different planets. Like they aligned all their whole belief systems by what was happening up in the skies, So, of course, a comet blaring across the sky and, oh, this guy was born. He's special, man. He's anointed. Of course, that's the kind of pressure they're going to place on a child born under those conditions. So,
Yeah. That's going to be interesting how it plays out, because you think about Kamehameha's ascent, but that not everyone's going to be happy about that, because you think about Cliff Curtis, his character. How's he going to deal with being passed over? That could open the doors for betrayal as well. You think about King Kahekili, he's not just going to step aside. So it's going to be interesting how that plays out. Are we going to get an Uncle Bully and Jake Kike reunion against Kamehameha? I'm just speaking as a TV fan. Just anyone in the comments don't at me that I don't know what happens, but yeah, that'd be good. That'd be good if they could get Uncle Bully, Jake Kike to team up.
So all these things, all the ingredients going into the story, like everything, right? The characters, the plot lines, the history. This is all history, right? Man, there's so much here, man. So it amazes me that that we have this kind of story. Polynesians have this kind of story in Hawaii, and it's documented, and they're making a movie out of it. And I mean, it's got everything. It's got everything you need for a miniseries or a movie or whatever it is. It's all there, but it's all true. That's the cool thing about it. So if we were to make one for Samoan history, like in our past, back in those days, like what would that be? Who's got the story there? What kind of interesting things? We've got heaps there.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering when that day will come when we tell our story.
Yeah, I was thinking about that actually, because you think like the show, it's a great show, and you really appreciate the authenticity, to tell the Hawaiian stories and the native Hawaiian tongues and all the rest of it. And I watched Cliff Curtis. He was being interviewed, and he brought this up, and I agree with it. He said, he likes the idea of Polynesian stories told by Polynesians. So this is written, produced, and starring Polynesian people. So he said, they get more control. And you think about a lot of historical shows, they've been done quite poorly due to that lack of influence. So I'm hoping that this is just the start, because you could travel across the Pacific, like you mentioned, Cams, or, talk to any indigenous culture. And there's really a rich tapestry of myths and legends, sort of pre-European settlers coming on board. So I would love to see other stories brought to life like that for sure.
I think you remember, like, they talked about this series is gonna come to a head when they have the unification of the Hawaiian Islands. So I guess we know from what we know that it's not gonna be Kahekili.
Yeah.
It's not gonna be him, Yeah, Kahekili Kamehameha the first. So actually, I googled his name, and man, there's heaps of stuff online about him, And you can probably jump ahead and read all that stuff, see what happens. But
I didn't want to. I wanted the story to be told watching Chief of War, because of the point that Stace made about how they're trying to make this authentic. They got all the Pacific Hawaiian people who've written the story, who are trying to tell it from a narrative that probably hasn't been told before. And it's authentic because these are people who are wanting to tell their truth, their history from their perspective. This isn't a whitewashed Hollywood production. This is a passion project by some very serious Hawaiian people wanting to tell this Hawaiian story, albeit with a few Kiwi actors in there. But the story is still going to be authentically Hawaiian. And one of the things that Jason Momoa keeps talking about is this love affair that he's got with New Zealand. He keeps referencing these New Zealand productions like Once We're Warriors, like Whale Rider, that he really likes watching. He's those are like New Zealand stories, and I was thinking, oh yeah, They are, but they're also like made in a way that it's commercially viable to have them, you know? Like, yes, they might get some funding from New Zealand on air, but, you know, Whale Rider was probably a good example of a movie that had a really good story, and then it just took off internationally because of the fact that it was a really greatly acted movie. I really enjoyed that, and Thingy ended up winning the Academy Award for, or getting nominated for her performance in that. So I was like, yeah, there are New Zealand stories, but they need to be done like how Jason Momoa is doing his one at the moment. So you're starting to see a few of them come out, like Kawhawhai Tonu that just sort of came out. They've had a few sort of touch on that era. Deadlands I really enjoyed. You know, it might not be a historical, you know, something that happened, but it's set in a time that was very similar to what would have actually happened. That's a fictional story, but you know, it brings all the elements of what would have happened in that time and what Maoris believed in. So some of those stories have been told, but I feel like there's probably way more of those sorts of stories here in New Zealand and around the Pacific that need to be told. Not from is it going to be commercially successful? That's probably where you need to get that formula right, because yeah, it does need to be commercially successful so that you get the investment, but it also has to be authentic, like what Chief of War is sort of feeling now. Like they've got these big, massive backers. Apple, they've got Jason Momoa, they've got good story writing, quality actors in it. And there's a whole lot of money being pumped into this, so it needs to be successful. So that if any future Pacific stories are going to be told, and let's be honest, man, Moana, I'm going to claim Moana as a Pacific story. Look at how successful that was. And it became so successful that the second movie was originally meant to be a TV series, or and then they were like, nah, I think we need to go with Moana 2, and it got released as a movie, and man, knocked out of the park again. Yeah, like that's I've gone a bit off topic there, but you know, Chief of War needs to do really well if we really want the opportunity for other Pacific nations to tell similar stories in the vein of Chief of War, because absolutely we've got those stories. I still don't think that whole triangle of Tonga, Fiji, Samoa, that whole interdependency and what was happening in those times has been really told, and that's a massive story to try and tell, because it covers like hundreds of years, that whole relationship when Samoa is enslaved by Tonga, and then when we finally come out of slavery, you know. So yeah, heaps of stories out there, but I think Chief of War needs to really be super successful with the amount of investment that's being put into it, so that other Pacific stories could possibly get the opportunity to be told as well.
Yeah, I hear. Because the problem with these streaming services, I know Netflix is one of them. Well, all of them, they do the same thing. They don't really put out their numbers on their films, how many views they get. I don't know why they don't do that. They don't really like to give out their information, so we don't really know how well it's doing. But you get a hint because it's number one right now on the Apple Plus on the ranking thing. Number one there. So yeah. Now I hope this series does well, and we can carry on with a season 2 if they will leave it open. Yeah, man. Another interesting thing I saw on this episode was when Vi was describing to Kayana that place in Philippines. It might turn into Hawaii if they're not careful, because that place is plundered, by the Spanish, and there's it's a hole now, She was just warning that we don't want this to happen in Hawaii.
Yeah, I think she's been there for a bit, and like you can see, Kaiana doesn't get it. He's relatively new there, so that's when he says to her, like, you've got a westernized perspective, but she's seeing firsthand the effect that their greed has had on the land that she's living in, and I think that's where she's coming from, when she just doesn't want to see that happen to her homeland. And it feels like I talked about the tone a bit earlier, the tone of that era. You know, there's an underestimation there, and on how dangerous the white people are. You know, obviously in 2025 where you can look back in history and see what happened. But, you know, these people who are living in that time, you can see that they don't really fully appreciate the effect or how dangerous they are. So, yeah.
I think she says, you don't understand how greedy these guys are.
Yeah. Oh, does she? I missed that part. But yeah, it's true, man.
Like, it's a different level. It comes down to values, the different values in that. Yeah, man. I don't know. Any other scenes there? You guys wanna touch on?
Did you want to talk about that scene with the Kaiki's son, Bob? Because you brought it up, but you didn't really go into it. I know that you got some points there.
So okay. I just want to tell you guys so we know what we're talking about. So that for me gave me, oh man, they're trying to do some Game of Thrones stuff with that scene, but they never showed anything, right? That is implied, right? So I guess they don't cross the line to show anything like what Game of Thrones.
Well, it's Apple TV. If it was HBO, maybe you might get the full full scenes.
But this goes to show how much we've been influenced by Western culture and Western standards of what's appropriate and what's not. You know, so one of the things that Sai brought up in the chat is like, oh man, was this just trying to dramatize something that probably isn't? And I was like, well, let's be honest, man. As Samoans, we know that there's lots of whakawhingers around, and we've probably all got one in our family, or we know somebody who's a whakawhingi. And I came across the word whaakama a few years back, which is the opposite. Like, you got girls growing up who are wanting to be boys, and so you got whakawhinga, everyone knows that, but now you got whaakama. Native Americans call it two-spirit people, where, people who have that sort of way have feminine and have masculine qualities. So they call them two-spirit people, but they don't have any sort of judgment. This whole westernized thing, I find it super funny because, like, they call them the alphabet people these days, all the letters. But then you've got all these people that have these opposing views that, that's not right. Religious views, mostly. That's not right. They shouldn't do that. Whatever. But indigenous cultures just accepted all of these people, whatever way they were. And so the scene that we're talking about in Chief of War is where Kahigili's son wakes up. The character that's played by Brandon Finn, Prince Kopule. So he wakes up, and then there's a guy sprawled out, all sweaty, next to him. He's half naked under the blankets, and I was like, oh, that's interesting scene. So the prince is what they called, let's see, Aigane, which is something that's the only research I did, just to have a look. I was like, this term referred to same-sex companions. These relationships were considered normal and accepted in pre-colonial Hawaiian society. Captain Cook and his crew even noted these relationships among the chiefs. And then the other one was mahu. This term described individuals who embodied both male and female spirits, often taking on roles as healers and religious figures. They were considered a distinct gender separate from male and female. So that whole scene there isn't something that they've dramatized to make it look like, oh, they're trying to be woke or they're trying to appease the alphabet community. It's like, nah, this is what indigenous life was like in Hawaii, again, which is probably what was happening in Samoa and Tonga and Fiji and the Native American Indians, as happening all over the world amongst indigenous communities. So I think it was an interesting scene that they put in there, but it wasn't something that should then get everyone up in arms like, oh, why did they put that scene where the king's son he was so masculine in that first few episodes. Now we've got episode 3 where, hey, the dude's like, he's gay. It's like, and what? Even the guy who comes up to his hut or whatever doesn't bat an eyelid, just says, oh, sorry, the king wants you. If these guys finish, the king wants you. There wasn't any sort of weirdness like, oh, sorry, I thought you were the king. Shouldn't you? You were the prince. Shouldn't you have a princess in there? No, there was none of that. There was none of that. He just came in running the errand, passing on the message. Your father wants you. When you're finished, when you're done, go see him. There was nothing weird about it. But I can see how there might be some people saying that, they're trying to be woke or they're trying to make the scene weird. But it was just how people were in the Pacific and in indigenous communities, probably all over the world. It was very, very much accepted back in the days before the arrival of missionaries, before they came, and everything that indigenous communities did that weren't in the Bible was demonized. It was seen as wrong. The way we didn't dress, the way we danced, the way we sang, tattoos, all that sort of thing. So yeah, like I just thought, oh yeah, interesting. Okay, so he's same-sex guy. Move on. Like it doesn't change the plot of the story. It doesn't do anything. It's just another dynamic of that particular character. So yeah,
It's interesting because I watched it and I was like, hey, what's going on here? So, but in my mind, I'm thinking, you know what? I've got a really westernized perspective on things because you're 100% right, Bob. That's, you think about Hawaii, you think about the beautiful tourist destination and all the paradise stuff you see in the brochures, but a lot of that sort of post-colonization. But there's this rich history, which this show's touching on. It's almost lost, so you think the roles that existed before white people arrived, the sexual fluidity was widely accepted back then, like you mentioned. And you think of even like Kaiana's wife, like she's a fierce warrior. And having female warriors back then, that was also okay. Then the colonization happens and the white people instill their own value systems, their own religions, their own patriarchal way of thinking, and everything changes. And all those things that were considered normal once before, like same-sex partners and female warriors, and all that stuff, and that stuff you touched on before as well, Bob, with the dancing and the singing and tattoos and all the rest of it, that's now suddenly taboo. So I like how they incorporate that into the show to show what life was like pre the Europeans arriving, and how bad my westernized perspective is.
Yeah.
I'll add.
Even the teachings of Adam and Eve, when they eat the apple, like Eve has to stay home, do all the meals inside, and look after the kids, and the men have to be outside and work the land.
Yeah, there's a westernized gender roles. So
yeah,
in the Pacific, none of those roles existed. Like everyone did everything. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's an interesting take.
And who knows? If you look up the history books on that son, he'll probably say he is gay in the history books. So why wouldn't you show that if it's in there, right? If it's in the history books, why wouldn't you show that? Yeah, man, I think that's us. That's us for episode 3. Just want to say thanks to you guys for jumping on, and shout outs to Simon who couldn't join. But shout outs to Simon for last episode, giving us a whole lot of engagement on the platform. Got about 60 plus comments there. Wow, and 2.5K views on the last episode. So, man, thanks for everyone that's tuned in and even put a comment down. If it's negative comment or positive comment, it doesn't matter. It's all good. It's all good for the platform. So yeah, encourage everyone to like and subscribe and throw in some more comments on your opinions. It's interesting though, because we learned something on the comments. There was some interesting comments put down.
That's right.
About
That's
our
right.
last episode, like the shark thing. Like it was other.
Oh, it was the Sharks Guild. Maybe it sounded like other, but it was a different one. They were saying that it was a different plant that was toxic to sharks. Shout out to all those native Hawaiians that know what they're talking about. They can come and fact check some of the stuff that we talk about. So shout out to you guys that we're getting educated too. Like Cam's was saying, we could cheat and go and research and have a look, but I'd like to see what actually happens just by watching Chief of War. I don't know nothing about Hawaiian culture or history, so shout out to you guys.
Any last words, Stace?
Yeah, no, just enjoying the show. I'd love to see Pacific stories told by Pacific people, which I mentioned before, and we're just really, like Bob, really interested to see how it plays out. Like I've been part of the TV podcast. I was part of House of the Dragon. The Last of Us, and you can see there's that source material, but I was sort of similar to where Bob's coming from, where I wanted to experience it and the twists and turns and everything. So I'm just really excited to see how it plays out. Obviously, it's based on a true factual history, but just from a Samoan perspective, I just love seeing Polynesian stories told. And I know there was a bit of backlash before about, having Māoris and all the rest of it in Hawaiian stories, but you think about how the story's unfolding. Because Pacific people, they're the same across the globe. You think about Hawaii, you think about the Māoris here in New Zealand, Samoa, you think about Aboriginal people in Australia. It's the same story of a foreign wave of white people coming across the shores and invading the land. So you don't need to be Hawaiian per se to understand that history and be part of that story. So I think a lot of indigenous people, Māoris and all the rest of it, can relate and tell that story as well and do it justice. So I'm loving the story. I think that's well acted, and can't wait to see what happens next. Cheers.
Bob?
Yeah, just like Stace, looking forward to the rest of the series. But to be honest, I want to give a shout out to AppleTV, who've been around since 2004. There's a reason why Jason Momoa is down here in New Zealand, talking about the quality of the production, talking about the quality of actors and the quality of the staff that are working, and that worked on his series when he was here. 2004 AppleTV launches, and since then they've had so many productions and opportunities to put indigenous content out there, and so you've got a great series called Ahika at the moment that's on AppleTV. It gives the opportunities for Māori actors to get on, Māori get involved in all the different aspects of that production, from casting, from costumes, from holding boom mics, all of that sort of stuff. And that stuff is quality, because it teaches all these guys for the last 21 years how to make good quality content, good quality productions. And so Jason Momoa comes down with Chief of War, and he's looking for indigenous people, and he's wanting to support indigenous communities. Man, and there's a whole bunch of Māoris who for the last 20 years, and Pacific too, because they've given opportunities to everyone, who can pick the ball up and just run with it. You know what I mean? So shout out to all of those indigenous productions out there and all the people that have sort of benefited because of the fact that AppleTV exists, and they now have an opportunity to be on series like Chief of War and all the others that have come on. That's my 2 cents.
Nice, boys. Thanks for jumping on the podcast. Tune in to the Kind of Rock podcast. When's your next one? Next week? After the All Blacks game?
Yeah. Once the All Blacks start up, we'll be back on. So, yep, looking forward to that.
Sweet, looking forward to it. And tune in to 135 Footy Show with Bob and the boys talking New Zealand Warriors and the rest of the NRL. Okay, boys. Channel 135 and tune in for Empty Up the Clip. Next episode dropping Wednesday, 200th episode. So thanks, boys, for jumping on. We'll catch you again here. Talk about episode 4 of Chief of War. All right. Bye.
So.
Bye.